Welcome to Simply Mindful. I'm Maya, and I am so deeply grateful to have you here with me today in this space of reflection and growth. Have you ever found yourself scrolling through your phone, perhaps late at night, and suddenly feeling a heavy, unsettling weight in your chest? You see a friend's promotion, a colleague's vacation, or even a stranger's seemingly perfect morning routine, and suddenly your own life feels insufficient. You begin to question your progress, your worth, and your path. If this sounds familiar, I want you to know something right now. You are not failing, and you are certainly not alone. Today, we are diving deep into the intricate architecture of the human brain to understand why we are so hardwired to compare ourselves to others. We're going to explore the neurobiological roots of this behavior and, more importantly, how we can use the power of neuroplasticity and mindfulness to break free from this exhausting cycle. To understand why we compare, we first have to look at the factory settings of our brain. There is a specific neural network known as the default mode network, or DMN. Think of the DMN as your brain's autopilot or scanning mode. It's most active when you aren't focused on a specific task, when your mind is simply wandering. In this state, the brain naturally gravitates toward self-referential thought. It starts scanning your social environment, analyzing where you stand in the hierarchy. This isn't just a modern habit, it is a deeply embedded evolutionary survival mechanism. In our ancestral past, understanding our social standing was a matter of life or death. To be part of the tribe was to be safe. If we were less than or falling behind, it meant a potential loss of resources, or worse, social exclusion. Our ancestors needed to know who is stronger, who is more resourceful, where do I fit in? However, in our current digital landscape, this ancient mechanism is being hijacked. We are no longer comparing ourselves to the 20 people in our immediate tribe. We are now comparing our messy, unfiltered reality to the curated highlight reels of thousands of people across the globe. When we perceive ourselves as inferior through this social comparison, a small almond-shaped structure in our brain called the amygdala, our primary threat detector, is activated. It doesn't distinguish between a physical predator and a perceived social threat. To your nervous system, the feeling of not being good enough can trigger the same stress response as being in actual danger. This creates a state of hyperarousal. Your body may release cortisol, your heart rate might subtly increase, and your internal dialogue becomes punitive. We find ourselves trapped in a loop of negative self-judgment, effectively punishing ourselves for a biological process that was originally designed to keep us safe. But here is the transformative part. When we bring awareness to this process, when we practice interoception and notice these sensations in the body without judgment, the power of that cycle begins to diminish. The first step in our journey today is simply recognition. When you feel that sting of comparison, I want you to pause and say to yourself, this is just my default mode network doing its job. This is an old evolutionary program, not a reflection of my truth. By simply observing the thought rather than becoming the thought, you create a somatic space for healing. You move from being the victim of your brain's chemistry to being the mindful observer of your own experience. Now that we understand that comparison is a biological reflex of our default mode network, we must ask ourselves, how do we actually intervene? How do we stop the amygdala from hijacking our peace of mind every time we see someone else's success? The answer lies in a concept I call conscious redirection. You see, the brain is incredibly efficient, but it's also quite stubborn. If we simply try to stop thinking or stop comparing, we often create more internal friction. Instead, we need to provide the brain with a different set of data to process. We need to shift from upward social comparison, which is looking at those we perceive as better and feeling diminished, to what we call internal temporal comparison. In psychology, this is known as self-referential processing. This is the brain's ability to evaluate information in relation to oneself over time. Instead of using a stranger on the internet as your benchmark, you begin to use your past self as the only valid metric of progress. Think back to your life 6 months ago, or even a year ago. What are the challenges you were facing then that you have navigated now? Perhaps there was a task that once felt monumental, but today you handle it with ease. Or maybe there was a level of emotional turbulence you've learned to sit with more gracefully. When we consciously direct our attention to our own evolution, we trigger a very different chemical response in the brain. When you recognize your own progress, no matter how incremental, your brain rewards you with a hit of dopamine. Dopamine isn't just about pleasure, it's the molecule of motivation and reinforcement. By liking your own progress, you are essentially rewiring your reward circuitry. You are teaching your nervous system that growth comes from within, not from external validation or being better than someone else. This shift is vital for our nervous system regulation. Constant social comparison keeps us in the state of high beta brainwave activity, restless, analytical, and anxious. But when we focus on our own internal journey, we move toward a more grounded, alpha state. We begin to feel a sense of somatic safety. We are telling our bodies, I am exactly where I need to be on my own timeline. I want you to try a small exercise with me right now. Close your eyes if it feels safe to do so. Identify one thing, just one, that you can do today that you struggled with a year ago. It could be as simple as setting a boundary, practicing 5 minutes of mindfulness, or even just being more patient with yourself. Notice the feeling in your body as you acknowledge this growth. This is your interoception at work. Feel the subtle shift in your chest or your shoulders. This is the physical manifestation of self-compassion. This is you reclaiming your narrative from the noise of the outside world. However, even with this internal focus, we still live in a world designed to make us compete. In the next segment, we will talk about how to transition from a competitive mindset to a growth mindset and how this shift fundamentally changes the neuroplasticity of your brain. We will explore how to view other success as not a threat to our survival, but as evidence of what is possible. Take a moment to let that sink in. You are your own best benchmark. Your path is not a race. It is a dedicated practice of becoming. As we move deeper into this exploration, we must address the fundamental lens through which we view the world. In the previous parts, we discussed the why and the how of our brain's tendency to compare. Now, I want to introduce you to a profound shift in cognitive framing, moving from a mindset of competition to a mindset of growth. In the field of neuropsychology, we often talk about the growth mindset, a term pioneered by Dr. Carol Dweck. But let's look at it through the perspective of neuroplasticity. When we operate from a fixed mindset, our brain perceives every failure as a verdict on our identity and every success of another person as a direct threat to our status. This keeps our nervous system in a chronic state of low-level fight or flight. However, when we cultivate a growth mindset, we are essentially telling our brain that our neural pathways are malleable. We begin to value the process over the outcome. We move from competing, which is an external, ego-driven struggle, to practicing, which is an internal, soul-driven evolution. I want you to consider the language you use in your internal monologue. When you see someone achieving something great, does your mind say, "I'll never be that good," or "Why don't I have that yet?" These questions are closed-loop questions. They lead to a dead end of self-pity. To break this, we must use empowering inquiry. We shift the question to, what can I learn from their journey that I can apply to my own practice today? Or, how can I refine my skills from the point where I am standing right now? When we shift from a competitive mode to a practicing mode, something miraculous happens in the brain. We reduce the noise in the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for complex decision-making and self-control. Instead of wasting cognitive energy on envy or resentment, we redirect that energy towards skill acquisition and creative problem-solving. This is the essence of being simply mindful. It is the realization that your only true competition is the resistance you felt yesterday. Think of your life as a craft. A master carpenter doesn't stop their work because they see a beautiful chair made by someone else. They look at the joinery, they admire the finish, and then they return to their own workbench with renewed inspiration. They are in a state of flow, not a state of comparison. In our digital age, we must become neuro-architects of our own attention. We must consciously decide to stop measuring our internal, behind the scenes against everyone else's front-of-house performance. Remember, the goal of this practice isn't to reach a final destination where you never feel a pang of jealousy again. The goal is to build a nervous system that is resilient enough to notice the jealousy, breathe through it, and return to the practice of being the best version of yourself, one tiny incremental step at a time. As we move toward the final part of our session, I want you to sit with this thought. You are a work in progress, and that progress is sacred. You don't need to be more than anyone else. You only need to be more of who you authentically are. As we reach the conclusion of our journey today, let's take a moment to integrate everything we've explored. We've traveled through the ancient pathways of the default mode network, understood the protective but often misguided alarms of the amygdala, and discovered the transformative power of self-referential processing. What we have learned is that the urge to compare is not a flaw in your character. It is a feature of your biology. It is a relic of our survival past. But in this modern world, your greatest act of rebellion and your greatest act of self-love is to reclaim your attention from the external world and place it firmly back onto your own path. True mental freedom begins when we stop using other people as mirrors to see our own worth. Instead, we look inward. We practice interoception to feel the truth of our own existence, and we use our past self as the only compass we need. When you focus on your own practice, the noise of the world starts to fade. The pressure to keep up is replaced by a steady, quiet confidence in your own unfolding. I want to leave you with a final thought to carry into your week. The next time you feel the sting of comparison, the next time you feel that less-than sensation rising in your chest, don't fight it. Don't judge yourself for feeling it. Instead, take a deep breath and ask yourself, am I comparing my entire, beautiful, complex reality to someone else's highlight reel? And then, remember that your value is inherent. It is not something that can be earned through achievement or lost through comparison. You are a unique expression of life, evolving at exactly the right pace. As we close this session of Simply Mindful, I want to thank you for your presence, your curiosity, and your willingness to look within. It takes courage to step away from the competition and into the practice of being yourself. If you found value in our exploration today, I invite you to subscribe and join our community here at Simply Mindful. Let's continue to learn, to breathe, and to grow, not faster than anyone else, but more deeply than we did yesterday. Until next time, I'm Maya. Be kind to your mind, stay present in your body, and remember, your journey is yours alone, and it is more than enough. Wishing you a peaceful and mindful day ahead. Goodbye for now.